Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Join me on the first and third Thursdays of the month on the Dr. Diane Show, where I have experts from around the country teaching you cutting-edge therapies on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. Please like and subscribe to my channel, Dr. Diane Hayden. And I am excited to have with me today Dr. Yvette Whitton. She is a board-certified licensed naturopathic physician and founder and clinic director at Adonai Optimal Health and Wellness in Monroe, Connecticut. Her journey into naturopathic oncology began after losing her mother to pancreatic cancer in 2013, guiding her to extensive knowledge in naturopathic and integrative oncology, earning certifications in integrative oncology from the Metabolic Institute of Health, founded by the renowned Dr. Winters. Other certifications include mistletoe therapy, ozone therapy, and nutritional enzyme therapy from the Gerson Institute. Dr. Whitton is a member of the Oncology Association of Naturopathic Physicians, and she also holds a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine acupuncture, which she considers an integral part of her practice. So welcome, Dr. Whitton. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Diane. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure, for sure, for sure. So I usually like to start these shows with just getting like a little bit more detail into, how what your journey was, like how you became, why'd you decide to become a naturopathic doctor? We mentioned a little bit in your bio, sort of the path into integrative oncology, but what inspired you just to go down the path of natural medicine?
Well, it's my background. Okay, so my mom, who I lost to cancer, her father was of Afro-Cuban ancestry, so she learned a lot about herbs. I would say that she was an unofficially trained herbalist, put it that way, extremely knowledgeable in herbs and botanical medicine. So I was born and raised in the United Kingdom. And so growing up as a child, I would always observe or witness the wisdom of my mom in terms of being able to make certain remedies to take care of her family and her kids. So that's the way we were raised. We went to the doctor for our, checkups. We went to the dentist, but, if we were ill, she would have a remedy. And so I remember just observing her with awe in the kitchen as she would have her herbs, stored in these glass jars, but they were not labeled. And she would be able to recognize the herbs, by smell, by how they looked, and so forth. And I remember one day asking her how she knew what was what. And she tried to show me, these were dried herbs, and she would show me patterns in the leaves, etc. But, I was young. So, yeah, that's pretty much, we were raised with homeopathy and botanical medicine. So always a natural approach. So that was a part of my upbringing. So I have to say, initially, that was my introduction to the power of nature to be able to heal.
Which is pretty amazing, because how many people have that experience, growing up nowadays, right? Like
Right.
nobody. Your mom is like a modern day witch doctor, right?
Yeah, that's how I viewed her, to be honest.
Yeah.
She would make, remedies, medicinal baths, etc. So it was just amazing to see, how she operated, in our small little town. And so, yeah, that really opens up my understanding of the ability and the power of nature to heal.
Which is
And I
amazing.
believe that, I've always believed it, and I believe it now. And that's the foundation of my clinical practice.
Right. And I'm sure that you saw in many cases it probably worked better than prescription, worked better than pharmaceuticals.
Well, there was definitely less toxicity, put it that
Mhm.
way. That I
Mhm.
knew. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you became a naturopathic physician, and then obviously, your mom's illness led you down the path of integrative oncology.
Yeah,
Um,
I have to say, from my perspective, looking back now, it's divine guidance. I
right.
absolutely believe that. Just the way things occurred and how they unfolded. Because I had completed naturopathic school and I was a former New York City teacher. I started out teaching in the South Bronx. I worked my way up and I became the lead science teacher in my school. And then I got what could be considered a promotion. And so I started teaching in Westchester County for a Blue Ribbon high school, Saunders High School. So I continued teaching science there. And then, I went back to naturopathic school. And how I wound up going back to naturopathic school is a whole other story in itself, right? Because they say, children are our guides. But I went back to naturopathic school and I got my degree. And believe it or not, the essay that I wrote as a part of my application package for naturopathic school, I stated that I really wanted to help or contribute to the field of oncology, you know, cancer patients, because I believe that people could heal naturally.
Mhm.
And that was the essay that accompanied my application. And then during, I believe, what it was my second year, which is the year that I started my clinicals, I believe it was my second year, in second or third year, I created an opportunity for myself at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, which was then in Philadelphia. They've since closed their naturopathic department. But I basically reached out to the director at the time and I introduced myself and I said, I would really love to have the opportunity to participate in a preceptorship at, the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And so that happened for me. The door was open there. And so, that was my firsthand view of naturopathic medicine in a hospital setting, so to speak, a conventional cancer treatment climate. And so I learned what I learned there. And then I went back to teaching. So I started teaching anatomy and physiology and, clinical labs for a business school for their medical assisting program. And I was teaching there and I was making a lucrative living. And I was able to perform both of my loves, which was teaching and medicine. And then, as it would happen, the school closed very abruptly. I believe they went bankrupt, and it made the news. And so, we took that, my family and I, as an opportunity to have a vacation. So I went to Florida and I came back. And that's when I heard the news from my sister that phone call that day. It's surreal. I can
Mhm.
remember exactly where I was and what she said. And I think, you know, most people have developed this fear of cancer that they can't even formulate the words to say it, right? Because how she delivered the news to me was that, mom has the big C. And
Right.
yeah, and so I remember sitting on that couch, that red couch, and for me, it was the realization that, everything that um, I had experienced to that point was a part of preparing me. And actually, I had said to my husband, my then husband at the time, I was saying to him for weeks before I got that phone call, I said to him, I feel as though I'm being prepared for something. And I don't exactly know what it is, but I said that to him, and so he would be a witness for me to say, yes, but I felt that. Um, on the level of my DNA that I was being prepared for something. So, yeah,
Yeah. And that's how it happens sometimes, right? Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I have to tell you before the call, right? So I just started randomly. I don't know how I came across Max Gerson, but I got his books, I started reading it. I ordered the DVDs, studied that, Charlotte's book, etc. And I really went down the rabbit hole with that. I took a deep dive into learning about that. So, at the time of my mom's diagnosis, that's the only tool that I had. But I have to tell you that one tool that was in my toolbox really changed my entire perspective um, on natural health and healing, because had I not witnessed that personally for myself and how well she did, given that they were only giving her, days to live, I was trying to get down there and to be able to bring my mom home to Connecticut with me and my family so we could care for her.
Mhm.
And, she was in such a poor state of health that, I was told initially that I couldn't do that because, she would not make it off the plane. But she did. And
Wow.
I asked for 2 weeks because, of course, Florida is not a licensed state for naturopathic doctors. So the respect is definitely not there. But I said respectfully, give me 2 weeks and would come back and, do the testing and, whatever you say at that point, I would have to respect it. Needless to say, I was able to bring my mom home.
Wow. That's an
Yeah.
amazing story. That right there. And I know all about Florida because we have another magazine down there. So it's been
Okay.
interesting not having any naturopaths to work with, because that's like, the majority of people that we we work with in our Connecticut magazine for sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been an interesting path just to learn about, what the laws are down there, and people kind of have to fly under the radar and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I love that story. We're going to get into a lot more about, what is naturopathic oncology and how you work with patients. And I definitely want to hear about, the your philosophy and things like that. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick break right now. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll explore more with Dr. Yvette Whitton, integrative and naturopathic oncology specialist. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back in the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com, or my personal website, which is www.drdianehayden.com. And you can learn more about Dr. Yvette Whitton at her website, which is www.ADONAIOHW. So let me spell it. That's ADONAIOHW.com. So we were just talking about, your mom and, kind of how you were being prepared for working in this field of naturopathic oncology and utilizing integrative medicine. But let's just back up a little bit for our listeners who may not even be familiar with, knowing that you can see a naturopath, or that naturopaths handle cancer cases and that kind of thing. So let's talk about, like, what exactly is naturopathic oncology? How does that work with standard cancer care?
Okay, so naturopathic oncology is just a specialty within naturopathic medicine. So it's a doctor of naturopathic medicine who has graduated from, a 4-year clinical program and continue to study further in the field of oncology or cancer care. So, a naturopathic oncologist, um, we are well versed with, the NCCN guidelines and the recommendations for cancer treatment in the conventional world. But where I find the conventional world is primarily compartmentalized, where they kind of hone in on the tumor. As a naturopathic oncologist, we treat the person who is serving as host to the disease. So we're treating the person, right? So we're providing a whole body or whole systems approach that is personalized for that person who is sitting in front of us. So I'm looking at their genomics, I'm looking at their overall toxic burden, I'm looking at their microbiome, I'm looking at their diet, I'm looking at their lifestyle. Because one thing we do know is that, the field of epigenetics, because epi means upon or superseding, right? So your lifestyle can basically silence a gene that predisposes you to a certain disease, or it can activate it. Okay. So I don't believe that genes are turned on and off literally like a light switch, but I do believe that a gene can be silenced based upon your lifestyle and your epigenetics. So one of the tenets of naturopathic medicine is that, as long a person can heal, right? If we are able to identify and remove the obstacles to cure, because there are certain things that would serve as barriers to the natural forces or the innate forces of the body that allows us to heal. So that's what we do. We look at the terrain, we look at the person who is serving as host to that disease. We replete any nutrient deficiencies, we remove any toxicities, we look at their SNPs, their single nucleotide polymorphisms, which predisposes them to certain diseases. So it can lend strength. Certain SNPs can lend strength to your genes and give you, an advantage, but some make you more susceptible to disease. So basically getting to know the mind, the body, the spirit, the energetic body, all that makes us who we are as the human spirit. All of those things need to be addressed, and all of those things have to be realigned in alignment before the body can move towards healing.
I think the one thing that you said that really grabbed me was conventional medicine treats the tumor, like the disease, only looks at that and figures out, how do we eradicate this? Whereas what you do and other natural medicine specialists is you're treating the person as a whole. And now let's figure out, okay, how do we get the body to heal? And if we can bring the body back to homeostasis and a level of health, the body will take care of the disease itself.
Absolutely, because as many practitioners have broken down the word disease as dis-ease, right? So when we are out of alignment, then that opens up, the forces that would allow that disease process to take place. Because look at technology, for example, right? It's supposed to make things easier for us, but we're still stressed because we take on more and more and more. As technology advances, we become more stressed, right? So, with moving away from nature and the natural forces that keeps us in alignment with nature, right? So, we've invented shoes and heels, and we raised our beds on platforms. So we're not sleeping on the ground, right? We're indoors. And so we've made things convenient for us to remain indoors for longer periods of time, not exposing ourselves to nature, the natural environment, right? And sunlight, etc. So again, the more we remove ourselves from, the natural flow of things, that kind of sets the stage for us to be out of alignment.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. And people, I think, we've just kind of fallen in line, right? Like you said, with technology, and advancement, it's just everybody's jobs became more desk jobs. We sit all day, we're inside all day, and we
Mm-hmm.
really have to make an effort, like say I'm going to go outside to exercise, like you have to make an effort. And even then, a lot of people will go to the gym and you're still inside, right? Like you have to
Right.
make an effort to be in nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. When I read about the whole science of, being out in nature, I learned that from one of our renowned naturopaths, Dr. Lise Auschler. And she, I don't know if she wrote the article, but I was exposed to that article through her about forest bathing, and that is actually a science. So, just like we use essential oils to heal when we're out in nature, and the sun is out and we're out in nature, we're, you know, having an energetic exchange between, the plants, the trees, etc. And then we're inhaling their aromas from the oils, their essential oils that they give out, especially in the summertime. If you've gone on a trail or a hike in the summer, you can literally smell the
Mhm.
aroma of the leaves, etc., and the bushes and what they're giving to us. And so we as we're walking through the forest, we're being exposed to those healing forces. A lot of what we don't really understand, because we continue to learn, about the power of medicine just being right here. Everything that we need is here on earth to heal us. And I strongly believe that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so what can patients expect with their first visit with you? Like explain a little bit about how, someone comes to see you, whether they have a cancer diagnosis or not. I'm sure, it's going to be different based on what the health issue is, but what would they expect when they come see you?
Well, we spend time with our patients, right? So even though I do offer telehealth, I like to sit in a person's energetic space, because that's allowing me to get feedback, from their energy. I get to talk to them, I get to know them. I generally introduce myself and speak a little bit about, my family dynamics, because I'm going to ask them, really personal questions. So I want them to be comfortable. I generally sit with my patients for about 90 minutes, right? Sometimes more. But I get to know them and I allow them to speak. Our questions from the intake form basically just serves as a guide. But I find that, the information that I need to help the patient will come from them, and then after that time that I spend with the patient, I generally get the information that I need. Now, sometimes, information gets revealed towards the end of that visit, because, we tend to, not everybody deserves our vulnerability, right? We tend to hold back when we meet people for the first time, etc. But spending time with them and letting them know that they're in a safe space, right? That they're not being judged, and that, they don't have to do either or, right? That's what I think a lot of patients tend to feel, that they have to make a decision either or. Either they're going to go the complementary and alternative pathway, or they're going to do convention. But they don't, right? My job is to meet them where they are. And I find that our patients do well. We're able to optimize their treatment outcomes when we bridge the gap between standard of care and conventional medicine. And
Mhm.
I would never tell a patient that they should not do chemotherapy or they should not do radiation, etc. My job basically is to empower them through education and environmental awareness. So when they and basically educate them as to what their options are, all of their options. And at that point, when they're able to take the time to learn and know what all of their options are, then they can make a decision coming from a place of being thoroughly informed. And that, I think, is extremely important, because I always believe that patients have time, because that whole process of cancer forming, carcinogenesis, can be taking place 5 to 10 years prior to the actual diagnosis. So
Right.
they certainly have time to take, at least a month or two to do their due diligence, and investigate what all of their options are, to learn more about their cancer, because, cancer in the body is unique, right?
Yeah.
Not every
Yeah.
breast cancer is the same. Not every prostate cancer is the same. Not every colorectal cancer is the same. It has its hallmark, based upon, the environment in which it is growing.
Right. And I love
So
that protocol. We're going to get into more of that. You're listening to the Dr. Diane show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll be talking more about naturopathic oncology with Dr. Yvette Whitton. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I'm talking today with Dr. Yvette Whitton. You can learn more about her at www.adoniohw.com. That's spelled ADONAIOHW.com. And before we just went to break, we were talking just about, what patients can expect when they come to see you. One of the things, well, there's a number of things that you said that I think that I love, and that, I think are really important to reiterate, is the amount of time that you spend with a patient. I mean, 90 plus minutes is, unheard of in terms of conventional medicine, and even some naturopaths, I know don't spend that amount of time. And just your philosophy about meeting the patient where they are, and never saying to someone that they shouldn't use a conventional type of treatment alongside what they're going to be doing with you. I think that that's really that's really unique, because I feel like there's a lot of natural medicine providers that are very against any and all types of conventional treatment, especially when it comes to cancer. They want, they don't want people to consider chemo or radiation or whatever, strategies might be. There's all different kinds of conventional treatments now for cancer and that thing. And I like that you want to give the patient all the options. And I feel like that sets them up for a better situation in terms of, not feeling like they have to, it's all or nothing. They have to pick one route or the other. No, you can blend them. And also, depending on like you were just explaining a little bit before we broke, the types of cancers are all different.
yes, definitely. And so again, what we offer our patients is a personalized approach, right? Because we're using the clinical model, right, to test. So we're using blood, we're using saliva, we're using stool at times, but we're getting to know the person intimately, right? On all levels. We're getting to know them, their mental, emotional stance. Of course, with a cancer diagnosis, right, then, again, that's a shock to the system. I actually think that, oncologists should be handing out rescue remedy, honestly, to patients at the time that they're given this news. And sadly, sometimes, they're alone, and this news is broken to them on the phone, right? So that's a shock in itself to the system. So they need time to process that. And often they're not given that time to really process, right? So the news is broken, and then the appointments are set. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, right? And the patient doesn't really have the opportunity to learn about, their diagnosis, what that diagnosis is, what that means, right? So the first emotion that would arise or emerge is fear and confusion, right? And so what we want to do is we want to basically assure that patient that, look, cancer is not necessarily, it's not a death sentence, right? And also the way I see cancer, it's a symptom, right, of a disease. When the tumor shows up, the tumor is a symptom of the disease. The disease is the breakdown of the system that causes those cells to proliferate uncontrolled, right? And so now we have the symptom of that disease or that disorder. So now we have to go and we have to investigate. We have to look deeply, to take a deep dive, to look at all of the systems. What is out of alignment? What is creating that environment, right, that would cause cancer to show up as a disease and have, that patient having to go through that disease process, because what we do know is that we all have cancer cells in us.
Yeah, all the time.
We do, right?
Mhm.
We have, all of us have candida, all of us have, these microbes that can potentially cause disease, right? But we also have systems in place that would keep harmony, right? Or restore harmony when things start to go out of alignment. However, for example, if we're not getting adequate sleep during a specific time of the sleep cycle where restoration, repair, regeneration, the genes that survey and look for mutated cells and then be able to kick those out, those aberrant cells, all those processes go out of alignment. And so I see a lot of, women who are nurses or in professions where, they have shifts, right? And they're working the night shift. And so there's the rhythm, the circadian rhythms are out of balance and out of alignment. So that period of time in the day and light cycle, or the dark and light cycle, where these specific systems are in place to protect us, when we've offset that whole balance, then, we're out of alignment. And if we're out of alignment chronically or for a long period of time, we're going to get disease. Disease will result.
Yeah, and it's also interesting what you said about sort of the process of what happens after diagnosis, because I had a very close friend that was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and cervical cancer, and literally she was thrown into this roller coaster of medical treatment. Like it almost was like she didn't have time to think. I mean, the amount of doctor's appointments that she had to start going to, and the testing that she had to do, and the treatment, it was like, and there was like this mad rush, and it was one thing after another. And she said to me, like, I'm in this, I'm in it, like I'm in this hamster wheel. I mean, I don't even have time to process what I want to do, because I'm just being booked here, booked there, this doctor, the next doctor, somebody else, the lab, the treat. It was like crazy.
Yeah. So as practitioners, right, naturopathic practitioners, regardless of what your specialization is, we have to serve as docere, right? We have to serve as teachers, and that's a really pivotal and important part of my job, is to be able to disseminate information in a way that people can understand it, that they can become empowered, and they can make those difficult choices coming from a place where, once that decision is made, it's well with their soul, you know? And so, and then I also have, patients who will come to me and they'll say, I have a gut feeling that, this is not the course for me, you know, because again, we have intuition, all of us, right? We have that, as we say, gut feeling, right? Because our nervous system develops, as we're developing in utero, in our mother's womb, we're developing that nervous system and that immune system, in our gut, right? The gut associated lymphatic system and the nervous system in our gut. And so when we get that gut feeling, generally, if we go with that, we generally can't go wrong. But, I will sit with them. I get to know them. I get to know what their needs are. They're able to open up to me. Whereas, there is generally a sense of intimidation or fear when they're sitting in front of the oncologist, behind this big desk, and they're being told, well, this and this and this is what you need to do, and not really even understanding, like, even just going through a review of, labs, with patients. I find a lot of them, they're told when they have labs done and they go back for a review of their labs, oh, this is good, but what does that mean, right? What does that mean? And I generally get people saying to me, nobody has ever explained that to me before. And my question is, why not? right? So we have to empower our patients by educating them. You know, we can't assume that they're not able to handle that information, because they can, you know, as long as it's presented in a way where it's not, you know, laden with, you know, medical jargon, et cetera. If you can transcribe or, you know, transfer that information or divulge that information to a patient in a way that they can understand it, you would be surprised. You know, they're able to make decisions regarding their care, and they're able to go into that decision with full confidence and fearless, if they understand the whys of things. And I think we just need to take time, number one, to listen to what their needs are and to break things down to them in a way that it's digestible and that they can understand, because they're capable of understanding.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things that you said before is that just the way you look at this, and the way that you explain it to patients in terms of the body's ability to heal. And so how, like, the tumor is basically like the end result, like the symptom, right? And all
Yeah.
this stuff has been going on in the body for potentially years before a tumor arises. And so explaining to them how the body system works and the ability to, okay, now we're going to figure out, like, how, let's get to the root cause of this. Let's see what took you out of alignment. How do we get you back into alignment, instead of all this, like you said, medical jargon that conventional doctors just throw at people. I think, like, that's really what you're here to do, I feel like, is to help people understand more about their body and how it works, and then that gives them more power, and just a better way to make the decisions they have to make in regards to their treatment. So I love all that, and I want to get into, you do so many more things, but I think this was so important to really talk through how different you are in terms of how you work with patients, specifically with cancer patients, but all your patients, of course. So I definitely want to get to that. We're going to get to that in the next segment for sure. But this was really important, I think, for people to hear, just your perspective and how different it is, and um, how much more soul, I think, is in your practice and what you do and how you work with patients. So I love that, and I'm glad that we got into all of that. But we're going to get to all the good stuff that you do in addition to into what we've talked about so far. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We'll take a quick break, and we will be back with Dr. Yvette Whitton. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. And I'm talking today with Dr. Yvette Whitton, and you can find her at www.adoniohw.com, and that's spelled ADONAIOHW.com. So we've been talking a lot about just, naturopathic oncology and how you work with cancer patients from a natural health perspective. But there's a lot of other things that you do in your practice. You treat cancer survivors and people looking for preventative types of treatments and things like that. And I know that you also offer IV therapy, red light therapy, PEMF. So let's just chat a little bit about those different modalities that you're offering. And I'm sure you use them with, potentially cancer patients or across the board, but why did you choose those, let's say, to bring into your practice?
Yeah, well, the PMF story, I don't want it's lengthy, but I'm just going to give you the brief synopsis. I spent some time in Germany at an alternative cancer treatment center that was founded by Dr. Henning Saup, who happens to be a really dear friend of mine. He opened his doors to me, when my mom was diagnosed. Unfortunately, she passed before I was able to visit. but I was able to see the modalities that, he had in his clinic. So how it pertained to me personally was that I got there, I arrived in Germany early in that morning, and my shift, I was supposed to start my shift at like 8 o'clock at the clinic. And so I had serious jet lag, and I barely made it through to lunchtime because, towards lunchtime, all I could hear was wah, wah, wah. My brain had just like shut off at that point.
Yeah.
And so he must have sensed it. He saw my struggle. And so during lunch, he took me down to, his treatment rooms, and he had a room that had maybe about, 8 beds that had this PEMF, technology, had Rife built into it. And he programmed this thing, and he said, when it beeps, he says, you're done, you could get a bite to eat, and told me what time to meet him, back at his office. And I tell you, I had this treatment, and I grabbed a bite, had a bite to eat, and then I, went back, and I was supercharged. When I went back to my hotel, like I was walking through the park, because they have it's very scenic, a beautiful park on the grounds of that clinic. It's a really an oasis of healing, really. And so at 10 o'clock, I was just so charged that, I was walking through the park at 10 o'clock at night. And I could not explain how that happened, but my mitochondria was completely charged up. And so I said to him, when I went back the morning, I said, Dr. Henning, can I get one of these to take back with me? How do I do that? And so I was able to bring the Sansa technology back to my clinic. So I believe in, how we use PMF, so PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency treatments. What we know is that PEMF is able to adjust the cell membrane so that any treatments or IV treatments that we're delivering. So I have a mat that's, covering one of the chairs in the IV room. And so it allows whatever you're giving parenterally, like via IV, to enter the cells more readily. So it kind of augments that treatment. And so what we have are, little pre-programmed frequencies that we can put in, and we can treat, anything from, infections, inflammation, improve lymphatic drainage, et cetera, with that. We also have red light therapy because, again, that's a form of frequency treatment. And I love frequency treatment because our cells emit a frequency, right? We're all frequency bodies, right? Energetic bodies. And so, with red light therapy, and we pair that with methylene blue because methylene blue is a photosynthesizer, which means that it is able to absorb the red light or allow the red light to be absorbed more readily intracellularly. So that's a part of what we offer. We have, far infrared sauna treatments because what we do know about cancer cells is that they're more vulnerable to higher temperatures. So we do have that available. And then the focus also is on gut health, right? So I have a full colon hydrotherapy suite there at the clinic. Our IV services and our injectables are headed by our medical director. So we have a medical director who's an MD. He's actually a general surgeon. And so he governs all of the IVs and the injectables at our clinic. And we have registered nurses who administer our treatments. And so what we offer in terms of nutritional oncological protocols, and even for, autoimmunity, et cetera, these are evidence-based, right? So we try to make sure that we're offering, evidence-based protocols in terms of our IV therapies and what we have available. And what I have to say is that we're not a drip bar, we're a medical IV lounge. So we don't accept people, off the street coming in and saying they want IVs. I had somebody who walked into our clinic the other day and wanted to be chelated. So we don't work that way.
Right. Or they have a hangover and they want to come in.
Exactly.
Get, like,
exactly. So I think that's a really dangerous way.
Yeah.
To operate.
Right.
But we don't. We're a medical facility, so we have to get to know the person through, their medical intake. They have to have an initial consultation, et cetera, and then we can work with them. We also have specialty testing, in terms of our oncology as well, because every tumor is unique. So we partner with with some labs where we can do liquid biopsies. We can get a look under the hood, so to speak, get to know that tumor that the person is housing intimately, get to know some mutations or some phenotypical markers that we can then target with our treatment. So our goal basically is to create like a health passport for all our patients, an individualized plan that's going to support the natural healing forces of the body, removing obstacles to cure, so that, we can optimize the outcomes for the patient.
I love it. I love everything you're doing. I mean, it's so complete, it's so comprehensive and yet personalized and individualized and all that. So for listeners who are ready to work with you, what are the next steps? How would you like them to learn
Well,
more or reach out to you?
yeah, they can contact us. You've been giving the website information, and I'm very appreciative of that. Or they can call us. We have a toll-free line, which is 888-655-8489. They can also call us at the local front desk. We're in office Monday, Wednesday, and Thursdays of every week for now. I do believe in taking time for self-care as well. Because what we do is so in depth that, you have to take time to care for yourself as well. So I can be present 100% for my patients. So yeah, they can call the local number, which is 203-220-8849. So that's, a way to reach out to us to schedule an initial consultation. We do send out an email to patients with additional documents that we like to, we need to see. I need to see. I like to see, or have time to review the documents that we request prior to meeting with the patient. So I get to know them, on paper before sitting with them personally and getting to know them on a personal basis. But again, our goal basically is to optimize the outcomes for the patient and to meet them wherever they are. Whether they're doing conventional, we can support them that way. If they've had a recurrence or convention says that, there's nothing else that they can do for them, I always believe there is something that we can do. There's always hope, and healing comes in many ways. Sometimes, a person will transition and that's how their healing will come. But at least we're here to prepare them, to speak to their soul, and to basically address their needs in the best way that we can, however that may be, in whatever form that may be.
And that's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for all this amazing information. I'm sure people will be reaching out to you as like I said, you're one of the most comprehensive natural medicine oncology practices that I've ever talked to or worked with, for sure. And so we appreciate everything that you're doing. So thank you again.
And thank you for having me, Diane. I appreciate what you're doing,
thank you so much.
in the world of natural health, because, dealing with people and treating people and seeing them, all facets of the human spirit, it makes the world a better place.
It does. It does. And I want to thank all of you for joining into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, and I will see you back here next time. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.